Hello and welcome to Docday. My name is Stephanie Haack. I live with diabetes and I'm part of the dedoc team. If you've never heard of us, we are a community by and for people living with diabetes. And welcome to Docday because this is our community event. It's a live stream where we invite people living with diabetes, diabetes advocates, to share their work and their personal stories here on the virtual stage. Today, you can look forward to hearing from many different advocates from all across the globe on very different subjects. So some of them will be light and fun and others will be more emotional. For example, we will discuss how we can make the diabetes community more inclusive and safe for everyone. We will touch on climate change and how it impacts people living with diabetes. And we will even talk about how we can prepare for disasters and emergencies. But we will also get some tips on how to have a happy and long life and marriage with diabetes. So stay tuned for that. Our goal for these events is always that people who are watching feel inspired and seen and motivated. So please don't just sit and watch, get involved. Let us know what you think. You have our social media handles here. You also have the option to leave comments and questions. So please make use of that. We really want to hear from you. So one more thing before we get started, if you're watching live, please don't just log off after this event ends, because then after Doc Day, we'll have a Doc Night. This is the virtual after party, so to say, and it's really, really fun, so please stick around. And if you're watching the recording, make sure to get involved in the comment section. Now let's get things started. First off, we will hear from some of our wonderful dedoc voices. If you've never heard of them, the dedoc voices are a network of advocates, and our scholarship program enables people living with diabetes and diabetes advocate to access scientific conferences. We believe in nothing about us without us, and that means that people with diabetes have a space and a place at these conferences, that their voices are heard. And of course, that the community out there has insights into these conferences and what's being discussed there. So we will now talk to two of the dedoc voices who joined us for ADA this summer. ADA is one of the largest diabetes conferences in the world, hosted by the American Diabetes Association. And I'm really happy to welcome Linxi to the stage to share all about this.
Hi, Steffi.
Hi, Linxi. So happy to have you here as our first guest of the night. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, your diabetes advocacy journey, and where the dedoc voices came into that.
So I always tell people that my full-time job is managing my diabetes, and then my day job is ensuring that folks with diabetes are incorporated in the research about us. So I lead patient engagement in diabetes research in Canada. So I've been on the other side of bringing diabetes advocates into the research that we're making in Canada. But of course, I wanted to be included as well and see how I could leverage my advocacy and my lived experiences in these spaces. Before I got diagnosed with diabetes, I did a lot of advocacy in mental health and youth well-being. But when I found out about dedoc and the Voices program specifically, it was an amazing opportunity for me to be on the other side of the programs that I run every day and see how I could bring my lived experience to these scientific spaces.
So this was the first time for you visiting ADA, right? Were there any standout moments, anything that you really took away from the conference?
First time at ADA, which I think in my mind was almost like scientific diabetes prom, the event to go to if you're into diabetes research. I would say a few takeaways for me was first, it really seemed to be like the event where it sets the baseline and the agenda for what's coming up for the next year in diabetes research. So it was a really great way to understand, okay, what are the trends, what's important to folks that are doing this research, but also to industry. That is really important, I think, in informing my advocacy and the work that we're doing here in Canada, and going back to community and saying, this is the momentum we're seeing in research. How can we better inform that as community? The other thing that I really took away is that there's such an opportunity to have more advocates at the table. There's this really important reciprocal value when we have advocates at these congresses and scientific sessions, but to have more advocates at Diabetes Scientific Prom would be amazing, because we can help co-create that momentum and agenda for the years to come.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. So what were your highlights of that week? I mean, you met a lot of different advocates who most of them you would have only seen online beforehand. What were your favorite moments?
Meeting folks was definitely a highlight, and I'll be specific about that because before this was my first in-person dedoc voices experience, and I'd always heard about advocates saying, it's such a highlight to meet each other. I think for me, the reason that was a highlight was the mentorship and the ability to not just receive that passive mentorship, because we follow each other online and we learn from each other's posts and webinars and podcasts, but when you're in a room together, that active opportunity to learn from each other is incredible. But also the opportunity to engage in conversations with research and industry leaders was invaluable, because sometimes we make assumptions about why things are done. They make assumptions about us, but to be in a room together and actually ask those questions was also an incredible experience.
I can imagine. Were there any sessions that you especially remember or that were especially interesting or surprising to you during ADA?
Two sessions stand out for me. The first one, there was a session about exercise in type 1. And it was really interesting to see how people and the research team, there was folks with lived experience on the research team, and they had been thinking about how to best support people. And there was questions from the room by the advocates about how do you best support people with cycles, hormonal cycles, and exercise. And it was really great to engage in a conversation with the research team after that presentation about, these tools have been great so far, but let's make them better for people who have an additional variable to take care of. And there was an openness by that team. And another session about screening for type 1 genetic risk, and how we can do better in figuring out demographics of who's currently being screened and who isn't, and why that is.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I didn't get to catch that session, but yeah, it's great to hear from you and also be able to follow everyone on social media and get those snippets and those learnings. And we see your fellow dedoc voices chiming in as well here in the comments. Thank you so much for the support. Linxi, anything else you want to share with the community? Any last parting words for our first guest of the night?
I would say that if you're unsure if this is a space for you, it's a space for you. And I say that because there is no model advocate, there is no model patient partner, whatever the language that is used in your community, there is no such thing as the perfect fit, because we're all the perfect fit. There's no example of what type 1, type 2, or MODY diabetes looks like, which means that you're the right fit. So I encourage anyone and everyone to apply, because your voice matters, your experiences matter, and it's a big burden to be present in these spaces when, they're not built for us. But when you do it with community and with your fellow advocates, we're there for each other, we support each other, and it's an incredible experience that brings value not only to you and your community, but to science and medical science in general.
Well, Linxi, I have nothing to add there. I think that was the perfect summary of what the dedoc Voices program is all about. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we look forward to seeing you again at many other conferences.
Thanks so much, Steffi. And I'm really looking forward to learning from the rest of advocates. Thanks, folks.
So let's meet the next advocate. We're sticking with the topic of ADA. We'll meet another person who got a scholarship to attend this conference. And this time it's somebody from the US because it's an American conference. So we thought it would be interesting to contrast somebody from outside the US and from within the US. So without further ado, welcome back to docday, Chelcie.
Good morning and good evening to everyone out there in dedoc day. How's it going?
It's going really well so far. How about you?
I'm good. It's morning here. So it's pretty good. We the hurricane passed over where I am in Florida, so there's really no threat of that at all.
Glad to hear that.
So you can see all the sun on my face right now.
Yeah.
Now that I'm glowing here on your screens and everything.
I'm glowing with the studio lights, but I'm also glowing because I get to see you again and hear all about your experiences at ADA. Tell us, what was it like for you? You've been around in the advocacy space for a long time, but you mentioned that this was your first real ADA experience.
Yeah, it was kind of my first real experience, because this time around, I think I attended ADA many years ago as, I mean, it was a while back. I can't even remember how I got an opportunity to go, but it was different then because I was pretty green. I hadn't really been around in the advocacy space very much. And so it was just really kind of a first time, prom, like Lindsay said. It was my first time. I didn't know what was going on. So I was just kind of like taking it all in.
You didn't know that dances.
Yeah, I didn't know dancing, which was kind of disappointing. But this time around, it was more of a diabetes family reunion, because I got a chance to see a lot of associates that I met along the way when I first started out, that I hadn't seen in years. Some I hadn't seen in over 10 years, just conversing with them online throughout the years. And so that was fun to get the chance to see them again. But this time around, I went in with different eyes. I went in with an understanding of a pretty good understanding of how things work here in the States, as far as the orgs and how they operate. But this time I got a chance to go behind the curtain and see a lot of the background.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, when we got an opportunity to be at the dinner that we had at the restaurant, we were in the realm of all these different people from different orgs, like from Friends for Life and like Phil Sutherland. Phil, when I saw Phil, I was kind of taken back, because like I've known Phil since he was a kid. Back when Team Type 1, they were just a bunch of ragtag guys starting out in Atlanta, and that was when I first met him. And then to see where he's come now, well, then again, it kind of made me feel like a schmuck, because I was like, gee, this kid is kind of astounded all these things, and here I am still punching the clock. What am I doing wrong with my life?
Don't put yourself down. You know that so many people out there are really looking up to you. So share with us, like, what was it like being at this conference? Were there any standout session or moments that you remember?
The one thing, I guess the standout was what the ADA was putting on in the back. There was a group of ladies that were leading a kind of symposium about diversity in the diabetes community. And there were actually students there from different colleges that were attending ADA. And that kind of took me back, because that kind of gave me a feeling that, okay, we're making a change here. Now we're actually getting into these young people's heads a little bit. And so that really stuck out for me, because a lot of the scientific things kind of goes over my head. I'm more of I want to find out how we can get these devices and treatments in the hands of people who don't have access to it. So that's kind of where my lane is. And one thing that stood out was I kind of walked through the session where all the different institutions, educational institutions, were actually putting on their displays of the researches that they were doing. And I was looking for colleges, historically Black colleges and universities, to see if they were representing it all. I may have missed it if they were there, but I didn't see any. And so that kind of stood out to me, and I saw it as an opportunity for these educational institutions to get in there and put something out there that can be seen. Now, the one other thing that kind of stuck in my head, what you and I were talking about yesterday, is like these vendors that they had in the area where all the big money orgs were, that actually can buy these spaces. Now, a lot of people don't understand how those things work. You have to pay for that placement on this floor. And so the bigger companies get the bigger spots, and the smaller ones get the smaller ones. Now, there were a couple of vendors there that were selling things, hawking things that had nothing to do with diabetes. One group was in the back selling these gel packs you could put in the microwave or in ice to wrap around your leg or your foot and everything. And that could be, something geared towards neuropathy. Okay, I could see that as a fit. But up front, in a more expensive spot, there was a couple of guys up there selling digital projectors and Bluetooth headphones. And I'm like, okay, so now we're on Canal Street in New York. We're hawking. It's a flea market now. Is that what we're doing? And it kind of embarrassed me, because, like I was telling you yesterday, it was like I invited my friends over to my apartment, but I forgot to clean up And now all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, this is
that's your American perspective. That's interesting.
Exactly. I mean, that's my American perspective, because it's like, oh, just these people. That's why it was like a family reunion, because there were those two cousins. They were actually, it's like, why did they invite them? Why they do this every year? And so that kind of stuck to me, because in my mind, obviously they had to pay money to be there. So it seemed like more of a money grab to either fill a spot that wasn't taken, or they just took the money. And plus, another thing that stuck out when we got to sit down with Dr. Bob, and I forgot her name that quick.
Part of the leadership of ADA, who welcomed us to the conference. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And sitting down with them, that was good that they actually sat down and, listened to what we were saying, because that kind of stuff is few and in between here in the States. It's hard to get people to sit down and actually listen to you as an advocate. And I see that there's a big, just like Lindsay said, there's a big opportunity for more advocates to show up and be seen at these places. I mean, definitely these conferences, because you have to go in with a mindset of owning your space when you're an advocate. I have a cousin who's written a book she's a dietitian, and she went to a conference and she was kind of made to feel like, kind of an outcast, because she wasn't expected to be there. And they kind of more or less kind of disrespected her a little bit. And, I wanted to teach her is, when you go into these spaces with these healthcare professionals, you have to own your space. You know why you're there. You have to show them that you meant to be there, because the truth of the matter is, especially here in the States, a lot of these healthcare professionals, they're good people. I get it. But some of them only see you in two ways when you go to these conferences. They either didn't expect you to be there, or they don't want you to be there as an advocate. And so that's why you have to own your space, stand your ground, and be seen and be heard. If they aren't listening, then you yell louder till they hear you.
I love that.
That's just me. That's just me, because it's come to that. We're in, here in the States, things are going just totally haywire in so many different ways, politically and socially, that you really have to own your space and be heard before anything can be changed. And it's might not change in your lifetime, but you can at least be the catalyst. Like I always say, you got to be the pebble that creates the ripple, that creates the wave, so to speak.
That is really, really good advice, Chelcie. And we can see the comments from your fellow dedoc voices coming in. They agree, and they're huge fans of yours. So thank you so much for sharing your insights. And thank you for joining us today at Doc Day.
Thank you. It was so great to see all of you.
So I think listening to Linxi and Chelcie, you'll have seen how important this program is to us, but also to many advocates out there. It's just really valuable to get these people with diabetes to these conferences, make sure that their voices are heard. So thank you to all of the dedoc voices, more than 200 of them. Thank you to the partners who make it possible, and to these conference partners who invite us. So for ADA, we really thank the American Diabetes Association. We thank our partners Sanofi, Dexcom, Lilly, Embecta, and .cool. And if you're an advocate yourself and you're just getting curious about this program, the next opportunity to apply is in November. So please stay tuned for that. If you have any questions about this program, pop them in the comments and our team will respond. And if you want to hear more from the dedoc voices, keep listening, because there will be more here today at Doc Day. But also we have a special announcement today, because we have just launched our dedoc blog, and that is where you can read from the dedoc voices. It features articles and opinions written by them, from scientific conferences to the latest diabetes research and technology, from challenges faced by those living with diabetes to global disparities in healthcare. Our dedoc voices will cover it all. The blog is also open to guest posts, so if you're an advocate and you want to contribute, please get in touch with us. But for now, you can read the first 5 articles written by Caro, Leon, Hoban, Heather, and Nina. There will be more to come soon, so bookmark dedoc.org/blog. And now we will meet yet another one of these fantastic advocates, the dedoc voices. We will talk about different types of diabetes now, because as we all know in the diabetes online community, type 1 is well covered. I live with type 1 myself, but for dedoc, it's really important to make sure that all of our programs and events are inclusive of all types. So we will talk about gestational diabetes and type 2 diabetes with Lion, all the way from Nigeria. Welcome.
Thank
Hi there. It's so good to have you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey, which started with gestational diabetes, right?
I'm a person living with type 2 diabetes. I was first diagnosed as a gestational mother, and that's with my second daughter. I have 5 daughters, beautiful 5 daughters. Um, so when I was diagnosed as my second daughter, that I was like, I've never heard of gestational before. I had both parents that lived with diabetes. I nursed them till they died of old age, though still to complication of diabetes. But when I heard about it, gestation, I was like, what's that? And I was educated by my doctor that it means pregnancy induced diabetes. And he educated me. I live with it. And I had my second daughter. Third daughter I had also no, when I lived with it, it really disappeared. Like I was educated about it, and then I got pregnant with my third daughter, and the same thing occurred, and I was told that I was going to go away, and it was true. Six
It went
weeks,
away.
it was gone. Yeah. So 6 months after, and I came down with some discomfort, and that's how I went to the hospital. I was not diagnosed of type 2 diabetes, and it's been a
Right.
roller coaster since then. Good. So that made me an advocate because I now was very inquisitive. I wanted to know more about why women will have a gestational to go, and then after multiple births, you now come down with type 2. It became a thing for me because I went through some discomfort. I went through a lot of backlash from the society. People were not aware. Here in Nigeria, people really are not aware of gestational, and even diabetes is still a challenge, much less gestation for a woman alone. So it was a challenging one. Then living with type 2 diabetes also has been both happy. I'll call it happy and sad because when you are faced with stigma and the lack of knowledge, even the high caregivers, they don't know so much, or their support is not there, and the government non-participation made it so difficult. So difficult living with type 2 or gestational
So
mother, being a
that's
gestational
what you
mother.
advocate for, right?
Yeah, that's what. So I had to now bring I had to bring women's attention, husband's attention, family attention, please. Yeah, I started advocating, injecting myself before family, friends, in occasions, and I talk freely about it. So people started embracing, oh, really? Oh, diabetes is not a death sentence? Yes, it's not a death sentence. That's how I found it so. I had a support group that made it so easy for me because my endocrinologist was very helpful. He educated me and made the journey look so simple. And I embraced it too because I'm a very inquisitive person, and I wanted to change the negative narrative because I lost my beautiful parents to this same condition. And I found that I wasn't alone. A lot of people were living with it, they didn't even know. A lot of women were losing their babies, they didn't even know that was the reason. In our society in Africa, in Nigeria, women, when you lose your baby, there's what they say in Africa that you're possessed with mermaid spirit. So that's why you're eating up your children. So a lot of women were stigmatized for that. So when I brought attention, women were not finding out that it wasn't, they were not spiritually. I mean, there's no black magic. It's just a disease. It's just a condition that happens that they would have had their babies if not that they didn't know.
So can I ask,
Yeah.
how do you go out and raise awareness? How does it work when there's these different thoughts and beliefs about this disease and this condition?
I became the face. I put myself out there. People see me thanks to my husband's support and my children. So when they see me talking freely, because it's not so what people talk about freely. People are so secretive about their condition. And then when I was pregnant, I was so open about it. I tell my friends, I'm living with diabetes. I have diabetes during pregnancy. So if I am going hypo, say, what's hypo? I'm losing sugar. Give me food quickly. When I was so free and talking about it everywhere I go, because I can really make my environment, people see me. before I speak. So
We see you all right.
I became the face of diabetes in my community. Yeah. I
That
became the
is
face
such
of
impressive
diabetes.
work that you're doing.
Some people call me Mama Diabetes. Some people call me. Everything about me was about diabetes. Morning, afternoon, my food changed. So I was just talking about the both with my food, both with the way I breastfeed my children in public, because I also became an advocate for breastfeeding. So that people will ask and they will say, "Why are you breast?" I said, "Well, I'm living with diabetes, and my children need to be safe. So I'm preventing them, and this is why I'm insisting." So I always insist. That's how I became advocate. I also started sharing leaflets. Stakeholders were really giving us, they were really creating awareness with educational material. So I took it upon myself to go on the streets, to go to churches, to go to anywhere I go. You have me. I just feel free about it. So that's how I was advocating until I now met Blue Circle Voices that gave me a louder voice to speak, and that
The
made my
IDF network. Yes.
environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gave me a louder voice to speak and more audience. And then people around me now, wow, really, and they saw my children really doing very well, and my children are all healthy. So my husband's support, and people started embracing and talking freely about it. And then I now met our dedoc, and I saw it that the scientific part, because we don't have innovation, is not what is in Africa. In Let me talk about Nigeria, because I can see some other African countries are doing well. My government, lack of participation of my government does not bring innovation to us. So when I saw our Dick voice, I was bemused. I was so interested in what he was doing online, bringing the scientific, bringing our attention, and trying to merge, trying to bring us to the same environment. So I embraced it and I signed up. I first signed up 3 years ago. I didn't get the scholarship. Then 2 years ago, I was accepted. I was so excited.
So that's a good message for everyone listening as well. If you apply and it doesn't work out the first time, please keep applying. It does get very competitive because there's only so many scholarships to go around, but we're also at the same time working on many more things to offer to the dedoc voices in between conferences. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I'm in absolute awe of you and your work. I love it. Mama Diabetes, I love that. So that's what I'm going to call you from now on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My pleasure. Thank you.
Now we will stick with the topic of type 2, and we will meet an avid type 2 advocate from the US. She's been living with type 2 for many years, or so she thought. Let's talk about that. Welcome to the stage, Tiara.
Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for having me this morning.
Hi, good to have you here. So I kind of gave it away there. It was a little bit of a spoiler alert. So your story starts with a misdiagnosis.
Yes. So I was first diagnosed with type 2 diabetes a few days after our 4th of July holiday in 2017. My A1C was 15.5%, and my doctor at the time said, well, you have full-blown diabetes, and if you had waited any longer, I would have had to go to the ER. I had all of the symptoms, like I lost a lot of weight, but I thought it was because I was training really hard. My hair started to fall out at some point. And the only resources that I received at the time were just a few pamphlets on nutrition and exercise. And I was in my master's degree in nutrition at the time, so I already knew a lot about it. But I didn't get any real help as to like the practicalities of managing diabetes. And I was put on Lantus as well and metformin, but wasn't educated about low blood sugar, was just told, take this twice a day and I'll see you again in 3 months.
3 months, wow.
Yeah. So, you know, I know a lot of people with type 2 who have similar experiences at diagnosis as well. A couple of years later in 2019, I had a high blood sugar, like the highest that I'd had since diagnosis. I think it went up to like over 400. And a former coworker bought me some ketone strips, and I saw that I tested for, you know, small ketones at the time. And another coworker set me up with her endocrinologist, and I explained all of my symptoms to the endo, And she said, well, why don't you just come in, and I just have some questions. Maybe it sounds like you may actually have type 1. And she ran an autoantibody test. And later on, she said, welcome to the type 1 club. You actually have type 1 diabetes. And up until then, like, things that had happened, and this is how I thought something was wrong, like my metformin dosage just kept going up. It was harder to bring my blood sugars down. I was able to get my A1C down to, I think, 10% since my diagnosis, but I was having so much trouble getting it below that. I didn't know what CGMs were until I started working at Beyond Type 1. And I didn't know that things like Humalog or Novolog were a possibility for me. So there were just a whole world of type 2 care or diabetes care that I just did not thought applied to me because I had type 2. So yeah, that's
so what was your emotional reaction? What did you think at that moment? Were you just glad to finally have the right diagnosis? Were you angry? What did it feel like?
I was a little sad because a part of the reason why I got into diabetes advocacy is because I didn't know anyone else with type 2 diabetes who was my age. At the time I was like 25, 26. I didn't know anyone else who had type 2. I hardly knew anything about diabetes at all. And I wanted to at least be that person that could help other people not feel alone. So I was already so entrenched into type 2 diabetes advocacy that when I found out I had type 1, part of me felt like I'd lost something. Like, was my advocacy still valid? Was it my place to still advocate for people with type 2? I think in the years since, and I actually had a conversation with my late boss, Tom, CEO of Beyond Type 1. And he told me that my experience is my experience. Like, you don't know what you don't know, and it shouldn't change the way that I advocate for people with type 2. If anything, after that conversation, I thought, no, this is actually a reason to go harder, because if I'm just now figuring out that all these tools are available to me just because the classification of my diabetes changed, then why can't people with type 2 get the same information? I mean, there are people with type 2 who are on Lantus and Humalog and need CGMs and need insulin pumps as well. So if anything, it was an opportunity for me to say, hey, do you know that all these are available to you as well, and you should have the same information?
And if it's not available to you, that's the next thing we're going to fight for, right?
Exactly. And
access is a huge issue.
And I would like to say, like, I think my experience is just a shining example of what type 2 diabetes stigma could look like. I mean, there were people who, I'm someone who lives in a relatively larger body. I'm brown skinned and I'm older. So of course I've already got a type 2 diagnosis based on that. But being misdiagnosed with type 2 diabetes can be very deadly. I mean, if someone isn't getting the right diagnosis at the time. So I think it's just really important for healthcare providers to just make sure that you have the right diagnosis. But I always hope that my story is inspiring others, including other patients who may think they might have been misdiagnosed, to try to advocate for themselves to get the right diagnosis too.
Yeah, so important. And I think you mentioned this before to me. There shouldn't be any stigma in any type of diabetes, also not type 2, but let's just make sure that everyone gets the correct diagnosis.
Exactly. And I'll also add, like, I've had a couple of folks when I found out that I had type 1 who said, oh, that's great. You have type 1 and not type 2. And I said, well, wait, hold on.
What does that mean exactly?
Like, I'm like, if I had type 2, that's also okay.
Yeah.
I just want the right diagnosis, so that way I know the best way to take care of myself. And that's really the point of it. Whether you're type 1 or type 2, you deserve the best care.
Absolutely. And I applaud you. I mean, I wish I could say that this is the first misdiagnosis story that I've heard or that we've had on docday. It's not. There's many out there who experience things just like you, but I think it's so incredible that you decided to stick with the type 2 advocacy anyways, because it's so important.
And I've met several folks over the years, a lot of them who are friends of mine, who've also been found out they were misdiagnosed. Some of them were misdiagnosed for up to a decade. And I'm like, that is insane. And I know for a few of them, like they've asked their doctors for autoantibody tests, and sometimes their doctors have said no, because they're like, what do you mean? There's no way you can have type 1. And they've had to get second opinion after, and then another opinion just to get
really fight for it,
that would run those tests for them. So yeah, I mean, there are quite a bit of us who have been misdiagnosed, but make no mistake, even if I found that I actually had type 2, I was still I don't think I would have changed as a person. My advocacy would have still continued, but I feel as someone who does have type 1 that I should be standing up for people with type 2 and amplifying their experiences, and making sure that the community is a safe space for them as well.
I think that we can all agree on. Thank you so much, Tiara, for coming on and for sharing your story.
Thank you, Steffi.
Now you will get to know another one of the dedoc voices. I know it's a lot of them, but they're just all so fantastic. This time we're meeting somebody from all the way over in India, and we're going to talk about how climate change impacts people living with diabetes. Welcome to the stage, Apoorv. Hi, Apoorv. We can't seem to hear you just yet.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay. So,
tell us all about yourself.
Okay, so firstly, hello everyone. I'm your host and host, Apoorv Jha. This is a dialogue that I always say before starting any interview or anything. So, yes. So, hello everyone. So, I am a dedoc voice firstly, definitely, because I'm on docday today. So, yes. And along with that, I'm the founder of Jal organization, an organization which works for creating awareness about water crisis and climate crisis. And I have been working for, creating awareness about type 1 diabetes as well in my country. And I've been working with different organizations in India as well as outside India to, just create awareness about it, because I felt that there are a lot of type 1 diabetics who are, like they are there, but they just don't know each other, and they just don't know that there's such a big community. Like in India, this is a problem because everyone, like there are so many type 1 diabetics, but there's not just a community. So there's one community in Ahmedabad where I live, in state of Gujarat. It's named Diabetes, run by Chelcie team. And
very well,
she is, yes, she is just rocking it right now. So when she started out, I was one of the very first members of Diabetes, and then we started from building the community. We started doing meets. We call it dia meets. So again, it's the idea of her. So definitely. And then we started to get to know each other, all the type of diabetes. It was so fun because it's like now you can relate to someone. And then I got more into advocacy. I also joined the youth program of diabetes, which is called Blue Post Network. I worked there for 2 years. Then I became a retired teenager. So I had to. So I have to
if
now.
You are a retired teenager. What am I? I love that.
Young adult, I'd say. So that happened, and then I was also, I was doing awareness on climate crisis and all, and then I noticed that these two, diabetes and climate crisis, had some connection. Like they are having some kind of connection. Firstly, I was not able to notice it, but with time, I got to know that okay, it's something that is affecting type 1 diabetes as well. So I thought it's something very interesting to talk about, and then I got to know about docday, and I got the opportunity. So I thought, it's the best place. If timing is best, opportunity is best. So why not?
Well, we're so happy to have you. So tell us exactly, where do you see the connection between the climate crisis? I mean, you focus on water in your advocacy, and diabetes. So causation, and what's the link, and what can people do about it?
Okay, so the connection is like, insulin, when insulin is manufactured, some amount of fresh water is also, like not some amount, just a large amount of fresh water is used for making insulin, for the manufacturing of insulin. And when this fresh water is being used for, the manufacturing, then we should also understand the fact that we are, just exploiting the fresh water as well. Because as we know, like, people have this very big assumption that there's so much water on earth, but they don't understand that the 70% of that water is just salty water. It's not fresh water. So that's one confusion that everyone is having. And to manufacture insulin, you need fresh water. So that's one thing. Other thing is that right now we all are, like, also working, we are all are advocating for one more cause, that is to reduce the prices of insulin. And in India also, it's like the prices are skyrocketing. So we are working to, reduce that so that everyone can get access to it. But if the amount of fresh water will keep decreasing, if we keep polluting the water, then it will increase only. The price will increase. It will get more harder to get insulin. And people are also doing a practice of insulin rationing. Like, according to a survey, a lot of people in America, or a lot of type 1 diabetics in America, I'll say, they are doing the practice of insulin rationing, and some of them unfortunately lost their lives as well. So yeah, firstly, may their soul rest in peace. And this gives us a lesson that we need to save water so that these kind of issues we don't face, and we can, reduce the price of insulin. Second thing that I noticed was that, like, now when we are traveling, when we are taking our insulin with ourselves, we always carry an ice pack, or, like, something which can keep our insulin maintained at a certain temperature. Now, it's something that happened with me recently. Like, I have an ice pack, and I always travel with it whenever, like, even for a short distance, even if I have to go for 3 to 4 hours, I just take it with me, because, like, it's important to keep the insulin maintained, so it's preserved and it's in fresh condition to be used. But now, what the thing is, like, if that ice pack I would be using, let's say 10 or 15 years back, then the longevity of the same would be much more, and it would be more durable, and my insulin would be preserved for a much longer period. Because at that time, there was no, like, the global warming was comparatively very less, and because of that, my ice pack won't melt simply in, like, in just a few hours, like in just 5-6 hours. Because I just noticed that in 6 hours only, in 5-6 hours only, the the effectiveness of the ice pack was gone. And now, if that will happen, then, and if we continue with the same practices of and if we promote global warming as well, because, like, things like, we are making innovations which can help reduce global warming, but still, if we have to take much more drastic measures. Because if we don't, then maintaining insulin would be much costlier than getting the insulin. Because right now, they have, like, in India only, one company named Gore, they have made a fridge which is a portable fridge where you can just keep insulin, in which you can keep your insulin, and you can just carry it with you. But that's also expensive, and it's like you are just just making techs in fields where you can just by doing some simple practices at your home, just by, like, taking some small steps, you will not need those things. You will not need those technological advancements, like, for maintaining insulin, and it will get much more expensive only. So that will be just adding to the problem. So I felt that these 2 points are really connecting with type 1 diabetes, and most important to insulin. Because if this is not solved, then we'll be having much more bigger problems in future. So that's why I thought that it's something very interesting to talk about.
Yeah. Really, really good and powerful call to action from you, Apoorv. Thank you so much. I see from the comments that people really learned a lot from you today, and that they're glad that you brought this issue to docday. So thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be over. Thank you so much.
Now, we've started this discussion, and we thought, why not dig a little bit deeper and talk about disasters, emergency situations, and how people living with diabetes can prepare for them. So I'm now inviting somebody to the stage who's written about this, disaster preparedness, many times. Welcome to the stage, Corinna.
Hello, good morning. Yes.
Hi, Corinna. Thank you so much for coming. So you've written about this many times. How come? What's your personal relation to this topic?
Well, my personal relationship to the topic of disaster preparedness is that everywhere I've ever lived has been subject to some kind of disaster or emergency, either man-made or natural. And So, I grew up in California where there's earthquakes. People were always worried about that, but they're honestly few and far between. And then I moved to Hawaii and got to experience hurricanes and tropical storms and tsunami warnings, which are a little more common and take more active preparation. And now I'm in the Pacific Northwest, and I have to say, this summer in particular, I don't think we've gone 1 week without a wildfire somewhere in Washington or Oregon.
And of course, we've all seen the impact of the wildfires in Hawaii as well.
Yes, Lahaina is ash now, and it will take decades for it to come back. And it's very sad. And the same thing has happened in so many other communities. Northern California, a member of my own extended family lost his house. It took him 5 years to rebuild. And the community is still not back to what it was before. So I just want to echo what the last speaker said about if we're not paying attention to climate change, global warming, the hand of God, whatever you want to call it, then we're walking around blind. And my big message is you have to prepare for the potential for a disaster. And as people who live with diabetes, it's that much more important because we're vulnerable to things that if we weren't evacuated or sheltering where there wasn't any power or avoiding flood or whatever, we would be able to live and thrive under normal circumstances. But when these things happen, our daily diabetes care is stressed and sometimes gets broken. The first article I wrote about disaster preparedness, I went back and read it, and it seems almost quaint because it was all about sheltering in place and not having power. So you just need to make sure you have battery backup and all your devices are charged. And, what's happening now is you need to be prepared for the possibility that you're going to have to evacuate quickly and you don't know what you're going to come back to. So I know one of the things I've done now is all my diabetes supplies, I don't store them on a shelf. I keep them in a carry-on suitcase with rollers. If I have to leave, it's small enough, it's light enough, it's portable enough, I can just grab it and go.
So that would be one of your recommendations, either keep everything in a suitcase or pack an emergency bag?
Well, definitely pack an emergency bag. I mean, the particulars of what any one person does really depends on where they are and what their risks are. If you're in a place that regularly floods, that's a different preparation than someplace that might have an earthquake. If you're somewhere where, the vulnerability is something that you'll get warning, that's a different preparation than something that happens, like that.
Yeah.
The other thing to realize is that, yes, there will be organizations like Red Cross, Red Crescent who come in and help, but they are going to prepare for the general population. They are not going to have a lot of diabetes specific or, whatever health condition specific supplies or preparations. And living in Hawaii, it really taught me, I lived on Oahu, which is the most urban island, but all the neighbor islands, when someone really got sick, and when I say really got sick, it could be something as common as a heart attack or a stroke. They were stabilized on their island, but then they had to be medevaced to Oahu, where the big hospitals are. So in an emergency, you have to realize that all of the healthcare that you're used to having access to, the doctors, the supplies, the whatever, may not be available to you. And it may require being medevaced somewhere. And that may be very difficult to arrange or have done.
Yeah. So somebody in the comments is saying things we normally never really think about. Caro, just like me, lives in Germany, and we're usually very, very privileged and lucky when it comes to these kinds of disasters. But you've also brought with you some materials and links that we will share in the comments so that people can get informed. Do you have any final tips for the people watching?
I would say the links are a good place to start. Nothing is going to be comprehensive or particular to you. You really need to learn about what's going on in your community, what the vulnerabilities are, how your community and government have prepared for the possibility of an emergency. And then you really need to think through, what are all the things I need to be able to manage my diabetes for at least a week? And then if one of those things fails, say your CGM doesn't work, or you run out of cannulas for your insulin pump, what's your backup? And have that packed as well, and practice. Like, I know people who use insulin pumps, sometimes they say, oh, I've forgotten how to do MDI. Well,
that's gonna be a problem.
That could be a real problem in an emergency. And I would say, take a pump break, refresh your memory when it's not an emergency, and then you'll be better prepared. I don't want to sound, I don't want to sound like an alarmist, but it's happening, and it's happening now, and we really do need to pay attention.
Yeah, and it's so good to get tips from somebody who has experience, unfortunately, but we're really grateful to you for sharing these tips and recommendations. So thank you.
Thank you.
Now, it is my pleasure, my absolute pleasure, to introduce you to a very special person who's doing a very special thing right now. And we were actually not 100% sure if we'd get to introduce him to you today because he's been busy. Last Saturday, he started riding his bike all the way from London to Kyiv. He's somewhere in the middle of Germany right now, and we're going to see him right here, right now. Welcome to the stage, Jerry.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Jerry, you're doing incredible things. So you're riding your bike to Kyiv in order to raise awareness for the ongoing war in Ukraine and the situation of people living with diabetes. How did all of this come about, and how is it going right now?
Well, I'm going to answer the second part of that question first. I've had to wait in a coffee shop, and now I've still got 43K to cycle. So I'm going to be cycling to Kassel at night with a little bike light. So I'm a little bit worried about that. But I got this idea that I was listening to the whole invasion piece, and I was talking to friends who were really helping people with diabetes in Ukraine, and starting to get an idea of what it's like living under constant bombardment, under constant threat of death, and losing loved ones every day. And on top of all that, managing a condition as difficult as type 1 diabetes. And then, as I always do, I started thinking about the kids. I've been helping children in impoverished countries, in impoverished circumstances with type 1 diabetes since 2004. Every year I do an insulin challenge to raise money. That can be K2, that can be North Face of the Eiger, that can be a new route in Patagonia. I'm a climber, that's what I do. And I thought, this time I'm going to help children with type 1 diabetes who really need help. And I couldn't think of a better thing to do, really. I can't give, £100,000. I don't have that money, but we're trying to raise that money by cycling to Kyiv. Yeah, it's dangerous. Yeah, it's difficult. And yeah, the most dangerous will be the last 500 kilometers from Lviv into Kyiv. But that's my choice. The children we're helping, they don't have a choice. And even as I'm talking to you now, even though I've been cycling for 6 hours and I'm pretty trashed, I feel really emotional about that because it's so unfair. And these people are being bullied. I was bullied a lot when I was young, and I've been stigmatized with diabetes. And even on this ride, we've had people trying to push us into barriers because we have RideUkraine t-shirts, and not everybody is for Ukrainians, as I'm sure you know. But I fight against bullies, and we're fighting now, and we're fighting to raise money and to help, to do our bit. It's not much, but it's something.
It's a lot, Jerry. It's a lot.
And those boys and girls, they need all our help.
They really do. And I'm so in awe of you, of what you're trying to do. We also have a slide with the donation link. So if anyone who is watching wants to make a donation, you can scan the QR code. We'll also share the link in the comments. And as we can see here, you're not doing this on your own. You're collaborating with the IDF, the International Diabetes Federation, and Direct Relief.
Yeah, IDF have been great. And this whole thing was brought together by a lady called Dr. Irina Vashensko, who lives with type 1 diabetes. She's a vice president of the International Diabetes Federation. It was her who got the IDF on board and who spoke to Direct Relief. And thanks to her, we have their support, and also, of course, International Diabetes Federation Europe. So big shout out to Irina. She's doing and has done a great job.
She's really fantastic. And, she's been with us here at Docday in the early days of the invasion and shared her personal story, but also the stories of many people living with diabetes in and around Ukraine. So it's fantastic that you have her on board as well. So before we let you go, we got a question in advance because we shared on social media that you'd be joining us, and people are really, really curious how you manage your diabetes on a challenging ride like this.
Well, it's like all these things, you just keep testing. And I'm a great believer in experimenting, in trying things. And so, for each summit that you get to, use the mountaineering analogy, for each summit you get to, you have to go to 1,000 little summits, and you practice a lot and train a lot and experience a lot of different situations. And that gives you the confidence and the knowledge to do this sort of thing. So we're cycling about 150 kilometers every day. Yesterday we got really beaten. We cycled for 10 to 11 hours. We hit really bad weather. We hit gravel that just really screwed up our discs. And we were exhausted because the GPS wasn't working properly. So we got in late at night. We had no accommodation because we missed our accommodation slot. And, we're forced to literally kind of beg on the street looking for a place to stay. But I've done a lot of that stuff before. I've been there before. I practice, and I was okay. We found some accommodation. We got in. And I got to say, I use a Freestyle Libre. It's so much easier. Oh my goodness, it's so much better than like having freezing cold fingers, white fingers. I've got Raynaud's condition, and then trying to get some blood onto a test strip to find out what your sugar is. You just scan it with your phone. Oh my goodness, I wish I could give a Freestyle Libre to everyone in the world who's got type 1 diabetes.
Well, we're talking about access very, very soon, so that's a hugely important topic. Jerry, thank you so much. We've got some pictures, I believe, from sunnier times when you started this ride on Saturday. I think that's right. We can see your shirt and the Ukrainian flag. I must say we're in absolute awe of you. Once again, we'll be sharing the donation link in the comments, and we hope that a lot of people who are watching consider making a donation. Is there anything left you want to tell people out there who are watching?
I just want to say, yeah, please share, follow, post your comments. This, we raise money by literally people helping and supporting and telling other people. If everybody could give £1, we'd easily, or $1, we'd easily reach the 100,000 euros that we're trying to reach. So please share and follow and like and comment and pass it around your friends.
All right. Thank you so much, Jerry. I hope you get to Kassel safely. I hope the German weather treats you a bit better than it has in the past few days. I apologize on behalf of the German summer. We wish you the best of luck on your way to Kyiv. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Now, we've already touched on the topic of access, and that, of course, is something that many, if not everybody in the community feels really strongly about. And that is exactly why the organization Life for a Child is so beloved and respected in the community. And I'm really, really happy to welcome Emma Klatman of Life for a Child back to the stage to give us a bit of an update on the work that Life for a Child do.
Hi, Steffi. So
Hi,
nice
Emma.
to see you. I think this is now my 4th doc day, but every year that goes by, it still feels incredibly new and newer somehow.
I'll take that as a compliment, so that we try to make it different every time and there's different stories. But you also make it different every time you come, because you have updates always. There's always something new to share about Life for a Child. But before we dive into that, tell us a little bit about your position there and how you got into working with Life for a Child.
Sure. Yeah, sure. It's always really nice to touch on kind of like the personal aspect, because sometimes I feel like I live a little bit of a double life, working with diabetes and also having diabetes myself. I'm sure, we all, can relate in some way in this community. To not being able really to turn the diabetes tap off. But I think at least for me, it's not a tap I do want to turn off. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 7 years old. So I've just passed 25 years of living with type 1 diabetes myself.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, a big milestone for me and my family and my loved ones. But I was kind of always involved with diabetes advocacy in one way or another, kind of from the get-go, really, of being diagnosed with type 1. So I was diagnosed when I was 7, and I really kind of got started in, I don't know if you'd call it advocacy, and I will call it advocacy, actually, because I don't think there's one definition for advocacy. There's no one kind of singular definition for advocacy, and I think, and there's no one way to do it either. And I think, at least to me, that's what makes diabetes advocacy so beautiful, is its lack to kind of universally define what it is. But when I was 9, I was really privileged to have a pediatric endocrinologist who was, I think, we're seeing more and more of this, but at the time, allies in the healthcare professional community were few and far between. I think now, with all of the incredible community advocacy work that has been done, around the Language Matters movement, to show healthcare professionals their responsibilities in terms of being allies for their patients, I think we're seeing that more and more now. But I had, as I mentioned, a pediatric ped endo who, I say that so many times it gets jumbled, but I had a ped endo named Fran Kaufman, who is probably more or less a household name by now, who saw that I was, I guess, a precocious child and liked to speak her mind, and I started becoming involved in advocacy around increasing funding in the U.S. Congressional space around stem cell research, and in California especially, Prop there was a proposition on the ballot at the time about increasing funding for state level investment in stem cell research to cure diabetes. And so that was kind of my advocacy when I was younger. I did, I was the national youth advocate for the American Diabetes Association, and then did some work with the California ADA chapter around the Safe at Schools initiative. And I took a step back from diabetes advocacy, which I think should be encouraged and is definitely allowed. But I had a colleague once say to me that, community always finds you and you always come back to the community. And that is what I did after a number of years kind of away from the diabetes advocacy space. I kind of found the community in a passion I had for global health and also diabetes advocacy. I never knew, a world like that could exist that addressed that kind of intersection, but it absolutely exists. Unfortunately, the need, to put a lot of attention into that intersection around global access. And it's been 7 years of working with Life for a Child in global access and evidence-based research and translating that research into access initiatives and advocacy. And I really haven't looked back since. So it's been wonderful. I said just when I came on that each year with dedoc feels newer and newer, but actually the more I'm talking, overwhelmingly, it actually feels newer but more familiar. And it's like this circle is getting smaller and smaller. I feel fortunate to say that I can call many of these advocates, speakers, friends, and fills me with such purpose in my life to be able to say that.
Yeah, I can absolutely relate to everything that you've been saying. And I can just give that back to you. I'm really glad to count you as one of our friends, and we're so happy to have you come back again and again to talk about Life for a Child. And it's really great to also now hear the background story and more about your personal relationship with advocacy. But please do share those updates now, because they're really exciting. There's really exciting stuff with Life for a Child happening. We want to hear all about that as well.
Sure, absolutely. It's a lot to share in probably 5 minutes. I'll keep it short and sweet. And everyone, please just take note of the email here in case anything I do bring up you'd like to chat through in more detail. So please, could you advance the slide? So today I'm going to be talking about just 2 program updates. The first is very much programmatic, and I'll focus on that now. So as some of you will know, Life for a Child is a program run out of Diabetes Australia, and we provide essential diabetes care to diabetes centers in low and middle income countries. And at the end of 2022, we were supporting 46,000 young people up to the age of 26 through 95 local partners in 45 countries across the globe. And remember, those are LMICs, low and middle income countries. This number is actually likely to be, can't give you an exact number of what this exact figure is today, but it will be higher than that 46,000. But to put that kind of number in the context of growth, we were supporting around 18,000 young people before we launched Vision 2030 just a couple of years ago. So a few years ago, we were supporting 18,000 young people, and now we're supporting 46,000 young people. And that number is projected to grow to 150,000 by 2030. But on the subject of Extend 30, I want to talk to you about another aspect of program growth. And this number here might not be as high in quantity increase, but it is a type of support that I think probably each of us in our own way have reckoned with in our lives living with diabetes. So may I please have the next slide? So this is called Extend 30, and we announced Extend 30 in May of this year. And I just want to take this moment, to remind you that the support that Life for a Child provides has always been to provide partner centers with support for young people only up to the age of 26. And since its inception, Life for a Child has always made every endeavor to cement our program with equity at the forefront of our program decisions. But we've always been a program, and we've always been an NGO with finite resources. And so as to help as many globally in need, we've always limited our support to those age 25 and under, because for type 1 diabetes, we all know how important it is that people are given a good start in their diagnosis. And also this is to say that in some countries, not in all of the countries we support, but in some, there are health systems to fall back on that do provide aspects of diabetes care. And these may be at a subsidized cost, like in Rwanda, there's the Mutuelle de Santé. Human insulin is provided in that health system, but only as subsidized to 90% of the cost. And I think as well, it's important to point out that, the aging out reckoning that we have faced is there's been something of a safety net with support from Insulin for Life, and to that extent has protected some coverage gaps. May I have the next slide? But it's really important to say that not all countries have these fallback systems. Once you turn 26, it's not as if, you've arrived to this place in your adulthood life where you can absolutely be sure to, afford out-of-pocket payments for your diabetes care. And quite often, this is not the case that, all or not even most young people with diabetes can afford enrollment in these schemes or those subsidized out-of-pocket payments. And so here comes Extend 30. Extend 30 was something that we had been grappling with for some years, but in May 2030, we were able to make that happen, only with the support of Eli Lilly and Direct Relief. And for now, Extend 30 only applies to countries that are defined by the World Bank as low income. So we're not talking about low middle income or upper middle income. We're just talking about low income countries. And so the countries that will benefit from this Extend 30 Life for a Child support mainly are situated in Africa. And these nations include Burundi, Burkina Faso, Central African Republic, DRC, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Madagascar, Mali, Rwanda, Sudan, Sierra Leone, also Syria, Togo, and Uganda. And what does this extra support means? It means an immediate 5,000 young people are now being supported who are between the ages of 26 and 30. So is it a perfect solution to reaching all people with diabetes indiscriminate of their age and income World Bank classification? No, but I like to say that, Rome wasn't built in a day, and advocacy certainly isn't a mountain that you climb overnight. And I truly believe in my heart that this is chipping away at equity in terms of access to diabetes care. And then if I could have the next slide, this is just something so exciting for me and that our team is so passionate about that I'd like to share with you. And I see a couple of folks in the chat and in the participants that I will give a shout out to in a moment here. This is something very different to Extend 30, and this is really about advocacy here. And especially if anyone is listening who is living in certain countries that will be clear in Latin America or Africa, please do give a listen to what I'm about to say. So may I have the next slide? So last week, Life for a Child announced a major new advocacy funding opportunity known as the Changemaker projects. And not only are these a funding opportunity, but they're also mentoring and networking opportunities combined kind of in a tripartite way. And I know I have limited time, so I'm just going to focus on the highlights here. Applications are now open, and you can see the link for this project at the bottom of the screen, www.lifeforachild.org/changemaker. These applications are open until the 30th of September. There will be 6 funding opportunities available, 3 to individuals affected by diabetes in Latin America, and 3 for those affected in Africa. And for each available funding opportunity, applicants can request up to $4,000 US. Selected changemakers will be announced on World Diabetes Day, just in November, and the 1-year grant cycle will begin this December 2023 and will end in December 2024. So you can have a skim through what makes this opportunity unique, but just to touch on this, I think the really important bits are that it's not just, funding is really important, but it's not just about funding. A really key pillar of the Changemaker projects is that I'd mentioned a mentoring aspect of these projects, and I feel super, super proud to say that each Changemaker will be matched with a sole individual professional advocacy mentor that has regional and cultural relativity to the matched Changemaker. And I feel super honored to say that Tino Tenda will be one of the mentors. I know he's a dedoc voice, and also Paul Louis Funant will also be a mentor too, in addition to a few other incredible advocacy leaders in their own regional settings and globally. So may I have just the next slide? Yes, so just the quickest of notes on the eligibility criteria. I think the biggest thing to remember is that these funding opportunities are for individuals. Healthcare professionals can apply, but if we do get healthcare professional applications, what really needs to shine through is the community-centered approach. But really, these opportunities are for individuals affected by diabetes themselves, their family members, possibly and particularly empathetic healthcare professionals who have ally relationships with the community. And if you click on the link that's in the bottom of the screen, please have a look at the countries that are eligible. I'd mentioned that the 2 regions that we will be funding are Latin America and Africa, but there are particular restrictions on this. Any selected Changemaker will need to be living in a country where Life for a Child is providing local support. Just the next slide, and that's the last one. So please just take a note of these key dates. Applications are now open. They close on September 30th. If you have any questions at all, please do get in touch with me. And we really look forward to your applications and building and strengthening advocacy capacity. And to just touch on, a personal belief of mine, in my view, it is a mistake to assume that we all have the same advocacy opportunities globally. And really the point of the Changemaker projects is to strengthen equity and fairness and strengthening those foundations in the countries we support, not so that every advocate gets the same thing, but getting advocates what they need in order to improve the situation in their setting. So thank you so much, and please do apply and be in touch if you have any questions at all.
Thank you, Emma. This is such an exciting update, both Extend 30 as well as the Changemaker opportunity. I hope that you'll get a lot of applications from people watching right now and watching later on. Thanks so much for presenting this. But before you go, we have a little announcement to make, don't we? Because the Blue Balloon Challenge is coming back very soon. And for those who don't know this, in the past 2 years, our generous partner, Medtronic, has donated 200,000 euros to Life for a Child because of the fantastic support of the diabetes community. We can see some of them there. If there are any super fans who can't wait until October, which is when the blue balloon will fly again, there's an opportunity to register for kind of a sneak preview. We'll host an activation call on the 20th of September. You get a sneak preview, but you'll also hear more from Emma, so more about the Life for a Child organization and the work that they do. So we'll also share this link in the comments. Make sure to register if you want that sneak preview and want to get on board earlier, but otherwise stay tuned for October. That's when the blue balloon will fly again. I'm really excited. I hope Life for a Child is as well.
Oh, we are. Lots going on behind the scenes, many balloons being gathered, and just so grateful to this ever-expanding community. Thank you, Steffi.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Emma, for your time. We love having you here every time again. I hope to see you again soon, hopefully on World Diabetes Day to announce the Changemakers. Now, it was our goal to introduce you in person to this fantastic advocate who's been around the diabetes space for such a long time. She's actually one of the OGs who started and inspired a lot of our dedoc projects as well, Cherise Shockley. She couldn't be here in person, but she took the time to record a quick video message to talk about how we can make the diabetes community more inclusive for everyone. So let's hear from Cherise.
Hi everyone, I am Cherise Shockley and it's good to be here with you all today. And I am here to talk about the importance of making sure everyone's included and have a seat at the table. We need more type 2 voices. So if anyone's talking about diabetes, in general, diabetes, and you're at a conference or you've been asked to speak, make sure you think about those that have type 2 diabetes, the silent majority. Make sure you talk about those who have LADA. Make sure you talk about people that have gestational diabetes or experience it. Like, it's a community. Diabetes doesn't discriminate. It touches everybody. So if you're speaking and there's an opportunity, you notice that there's nobody with type 2 and it's a conference about diabetes, it's a session about diabetes, then it's important to have somebody with type 2 sitting right along with you. Another thing that's missing, right? All of these communities realize, our organizations realize, oh shoot, we need to really talk to people of color. We need to talk to Black people. We need to talk to Asian people. We need to talk to African people. We need to talk to all of these people that we left behind. Well, as a community, we have that problem too. It's no secret the diabetes community, especially in the US, and from what I've seen in some countries, it's very white, which is okay because that's what I guess people use social media to talk about their diabetes. However, when we're in a community that's for people with diabetes, it's very important that there's representation. The more diverse voices, people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, people from different countries, people who don't look like me, people who don't look like you, people who may not look like anybody in the room, people that don't speak the same languages. These matter, they matter, their opinions matter, and they should have a seat at the table because diabetes care, as we know, is not a one-size-fits-all. It's not one culture fits all. Instead of you being that voice for that group, Get on social media, network, find someone with type 2, or find someone who doesn't look like you who has that experience. So diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging, it all matters. Because at the end of the day, like I said, diabetes does not discriminate. The more voices, opinions, and thoughts that's floating around this space and getting into the right rooms will make it better for you and I and future generations to come.
Huge shout out to Cherise for recording this message. I think it's such an important one. I'm so glad that we were able to include this. And of course, we've seen the comments. Please keep them coming. This is such a central issue in the diabetes community. So keep discussing in the comments. And we will now continue this exact conversation with another guest from the US. Her name is Allison, and she's one of the co-founders of a network called Subtle Asian Diabetics. Let's talk about it. Welcome.
Hi, Steffi. It's nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
Nice to see you here as well. Allison, share a little bit about your personal journey and how this network came about.
Yeah, of course. So let me share some pictures from our organization. So I was diagnosed with diabetes at age 11. And growing up, I just noticed there weren't a lot of Asians, people who looked like me in diabetes spaces, whether that was diabetes camp or advocacy events. And as I grew up and met a couple other Asian diabetic friends, we kind of reflected on this common experience and decided to start this organization a couple years ago. We envisioned it as a community for Asian diabetics of all types, all backgrounds, no matter where they lived in the world, to kind of connect over our shared identity. We tried to have both ways to connect virtually as well as in person. So we really want to build a safe, inclusive community for us in the diabetic space.
Can you share a little bit about why that is so important? I mean, for me, for example, it took me years to find the online community. I was diagnosed and I was the loneliest person in the world because I thought I was the only one with diabetes. Then I found the online community and I realized, oh, I'm not alone. There's so many people like me, but then again, everybody looked like me. So it was really easy for me to feel like I belonged. And that's different if you have a different background. Can you elaborate a little bit more?
Right. I think finding people who can connect with you on these multiple levels, whether that's the culture, the chronic illness, just like the types of like foods you grew up eating that should bring you like a lot of joy. I feel it's really important for diabetics of any, type and culture to have a space where they feel belonging. We've had some diabetics in our group who've come in and it's like, I've never even met a type 1 diabetic before, let alone another Asian diabetic before. And it's been so wonderful to like fold them into the group. Of course, like I mentioned like the food all the time, but it's something we constantly talk about, like how do we take insulin for hot pot or Korean
barbecue? I can certainly relate to that.
For boba, right? So there's different like cultural foods we have, and we also talk about with genetically Asians are like the minority of type 1 diabetes in general. There's just like lower awareness, lower familiarity among our Asian community, our parents, grandparents, they're not so familiar with seeing this disease where they grew up. And so it's having to also like educate our families about what it means and then how it emotionally impacts us as well. Yeah.
I think many of the people who are watching and listening in right now will feel inspired by this because you're based in California, right? This
Correct.
Could be something that could be set up everywhere in the world for many different groups. Do you have any tips for anyone who's watching and who's thinking like, maybe I should do this in my city?
Right. Start by finding these local platforms, ways that, diabetics or people with chronic illness can get in touch with each other in your area. You could also reach out to us. We try to like amplify like different members, and we're trying to get ways in which we can connect to each other in different countries. We have members from Malaysia, from Vietnam, from Canada, Australia, and the United States, and all these other areas. So we'd love to get involved. And here, these are just like general goals that we have like as a community and things that we should be advocating for, not just Asians, but other culture groups or special groups within the diabetes community. We're always looking for more representation in diabetes leadership. We always want to advocate for like mental wellness and emotional self-care in all our groups with diabetes. And so we also have a little QR code. This is a resource list with it includes some like carb counting sheets for different Asian cuisines, which you may find useful the next time you try some Korean barbecue or something like that. But yeah, we appreciate giving the platform and always helping connect our Asian diabetics to each other around the world.
Thank you so much. I think this is a fantastic initiative, and I really hope that it inspires many more out there. And good luck, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Now, our next story is a very, very happy one. I promise you that. But I do want to give you a quick content note because it does touch on the heavier subjects of life. We're going to be talking about mental health, depression, and suicidal ideation. So just be aware of that. But as I said, it's a happy story. And I'm really, really excited to invite Claire to the stage to talk about transitioning with diabetes.
Hi, Steffi. Good morning.
Hi, Claire. I'm so happy. Yeah, evening. It's a very international event. So I'm so happy that you're here to talk about this subject. Can you explain a little bit what it means to transition and what your personal story with this is?
Yeah, so I am transgender, but more importantly, I'm diabetic. I've had diabetes for 24 years. And I know that we've talked a lot about community. Thankfully, I was able to grow up in a diabetic community. I went to diabetes camp.
And diabetes camp changed your life. You mentioned that before. It's incredible.
It was amazing. So community is definitely important, no matter what walk of life you're in. But yeah, so transitioning with diabetes is very different. I know population-wise there's probably not as many transgender diabetics out there. But yeah, it's affected me greatly. And yeah, here to talk about that.
So let's start from the beginning. You mentioned diabetes camps. That's where you met so many important people in your life. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed when I was 9 years old. I started going to diabetes camp two months after I was diagnosed. Wow. And I have met lifelong friends there. Just as a lot of you guys were saying that, you've developed these friendships with people that you share common interests, if that's food or your chronic medical conditions. I met my wife there as well. So we met when we were 12 years old at diabetes camp, and she also shares diabetes with me. So,
I love that so much about your story.
Yes. So, but community support is so important for all of us.
So you met at a really young age. Since when have you been a couple?
So everybody loves that I tell people that I met my wife at diabetes camp.
Yeah.
because a lot of people don't understand that diabetes camp is a thing. So a lot of people, think that you're diagnosed with diabetes and that's it. It's just like any other medical condition. They don't understand that there are these communities out there that help support diabetics as well. So we started dating. We met when we were 12 years old, and we started dating around when we were 16 years old. So we've been together almost 16 years.
That's incredible.
Through everything.
Okay, you mentioned through everything. So how did this topic of transitioning pop up with you? What were your thoughts at that minute, at that moment in your life?
Yeah, so I was 31 years old. My diabetes was a disaster. I was not taking care of myself. My A1C was terrible. I was severely depressed, had no good outlook on life. So I ultimately got to the point where it was either accept myself for who I was and take care of my health and take care of myself, or ultimately, potentially not. And if that be suicide or just a deeper depression, that's where I was at. So I was 31 years old when I decided just to bite the bullet and say, hey, this is me. This is my life, and I'm still the same person, and love me and support me or not.
I'm so glad that you made that decision, took that route, and your family supported you with that. What did that journey look like?
It was rough, but thankfully I've had a lot of support. I've had support from my wife. I also have 2 children as well, so it's been very supportive. And
we actually have some photos that we can share of this beautiful family of yours.
Yeah, so it's my wife
That's
and
lovely.
Wife and kids. So yes, support has been great. It's definitely not an easy road, but it's definitely a better road. So my outlook on life is a lot happier. I'm not suicidal. I want to advocate. I want to advocate for the diabetes community, but also just the LGBT community as well, because there are so many people out there that may be questioning or may have a fear of coming out. And ultimately that doesn't just affect your mental state. Of course it makes you more depressed, but it can also affect your medical conditions as well. So there are a lot of people that are scared to seek medical care because they are transgender. And that's not just for diabetes, but that's for anything, because there is a stigma associated with being transgender.
Yeah, we're also sharing some resources that we've compiled in the comments. So if anyone is feeling like they have a difficult outlook on life, feel free to use those links and reach out. But Claire, can you also elaborate a little more about what transitioning meant for your diabetes and what
Yes.
that was like? Because that was challenging, wasn't it?
It was a roller coaster. I don't know if any of you have especially being a type 1 diabetic, going through puberty, it is a second puberty. And my blood sugars were all over the place. My A1C only went higher initially after I started taking hormones. It's almost like going through puberty or being pregnant with your cravings, and my diet was not the best. But it is definitely manageable. And my last A1C was 5.7.
Wow, that is very impressive. So it sounds and looks like it's definitely worth it to reach out and take those steps.
Definitely. It's made a major change, not only in my diabetes. 5.7 is literally the best A1C I've ever had. It's 5.7%. So
it's incredible.
Yeah, but my overall outlook on life is a lot better. So
I'm so glad to hear that.
Definitely worth it.
Is there anything, I mean, we have this wonderful comment from Sana coming in, talking about the stigma attached to transgender folks everywhere across the world. Is there anything else you want to let the community know, any messages you want to
I just
finish off?
I'm sorry. I just want to piggyback on pretty much what everybody else is saying. Community is so important. And if you feel like you're in one of these groups of people that may not be as like the majority of everybody else, I just want to let you know that you do deserve care. You deserve care with your diabetes. You deserve care with your mental health. Nothing should stop us from taking care of ourselves and being our authentic selves.
That's such a beautiful sentiment to finish this off with. Thank you so much, Claire, for sharing your story. There's an incredible article about you with Diatribe. We've also shared that link as well for people to read and find out more about your journey. So thank you so much for sharing this with us, Claire.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Now, our next guest is always a pleasure to introduce. She's actually been involved with, I think, every single Doc Day we've ever had before. So joining us from all across the globe, all over there in Australia, in the middle of the night, as always, is our dedoc head of advocacy, Renza Scibilia, and she's going to be talking about stigma and how we can end it.
Hello, Steffi. How are you, my friend?
I'm so happy. I'm so happy. So many fantastic people I get to talk to. This is the best part of the job I can. But you know this.
I do know this, but I'm just sitting here in the middle of the night on my own in my study. But just listening to stories, just listening to stories of how important community is, and just listening to Claire then and to Allison and to Emma earlier on and to everybody just talking about this. And I always say community is everything, and it really, really is. So I'm so delighted that I get to hear all these stories, and you're doing such a wonderful job of providing a platform for people to share their stories.
Thank you. And of course, we get to provide a platform for those topics and projects that we care about so deeply. And one of them is ending diabetes stigma. Do you want to share a little bit about the work that we've been doing?
Yeah, how much have we been hearing about stigma in today, whatever time it is? It was funny at ADA earlier this year. I was walking, down a corridor, and somebody said, "Gosh, everybody's talking about stigma," and I'm like, "Yes, isn't it great?" 4 out of 5 people with diabetes have experienced stigma. That's what the research shows us. Up to 1 in 3 have faced discrimination due to their diabetes. So this is not something that's on the fringes. It's not something that, it's because we're all little precious flowers. This is something that actually impacts our diabetes care. So we're doing something about it, and we're seeing that across the community. We've been talking about it, for a long time now. But earlier this year, 51 people from 18 countries across the world, and when I say 51 people, I'm talking about researchers, clinicians, and a whole lot of people with diabetes, because nothing about us without us. We all united to establish an international consensus on 49 statements of evidence and recommendations. This document is currently under review, and Steffi, I know that you're one of those 51 experts that was involved in this, and I think that there are people on this call as well who are also involved. It was an absolutely phenomenal group effort led by Jane Spate and Liz Holmes-Truscott out of the Australian Centre for Behavioural Research in Diabetes. But this is a truly global statement that will be published later this year. And that's going to be fantastic, because it's actually, it is about evidence. It is about supporting those stories that we say. We bring the hearts, this will bring the minds. So that sort of rounds that out. But for now, while we're waiting for that document to be published, we have launched a pledge to end diabetes stigma. And I'm sure that a lot of people in the diabetes community have already seen it. And there it is, enddiabetesstigma.org. Over 130 organisations from around the world have signed it, and that includes IDF Europe, JDRF International, and smaller groups as well. The DSN Forum UK group, I noticed, has just recently signed it. So over 1,200 individuals have signed it as well. So people individually can sign it, but also organisations can. The thing I'm loving is that a whole heap of organisations who have signed it, not diabetes organisations. This isn't only about diabetes. This is far, far broader than that. Mm-hmm. So we're asking people, if you haven't already signed it, it will literally take you 2 minutes to do so. Please go to enddiabetes.org and do this. This is about holding people and organisations to account, really, and that's one of the reasons, I guess, that we wanted organisations to do this, because they are pledging to end diabetes stigma through their activities. This is going to take a global effort, not just from a few diabetes advocates jumping up and down and saying this affects us, please stop being mean to us, because that's not what this is about. This is a concerted effort to change the narrative about diabetes, for people to understand that it's a serious condition, but that, stigmatizing diabetes and people with diabetes, making diabetes jokes, it's just absolutely not on, and it needs to stop.
Yeah, I can only say that it was a huge privilege to get to work with all of these incredible people on this paper. I can't wait until it's published, but I think this is such a great move to get the community on board and have everybody within the community, but also outside the community, pledge this and make sure to not just sign it, but also really get active and really work towards ending the stigma. Yeah.
Absolutely. And thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk about it here. We know just how amazing this community is at getting information out there, at sharing community initiatives and efforts. So we'd absolutely be delighted to see people sharing this. I know that there are social tiles that you can then use, and we've seen those being splashed across the Diabetes Online community in recent times. And I'm looking forward to seeing that even more after tonight's or today's event.
So when will this be published? Can you tell people already?
Oh, I think we're going to say, I don't know, there's a big day in November around diabetes, isn't there? Fingers crossed, that's the plan. But, keep an eye on the website. There is that website. Have a look there. And there'll be people making a lot of noise when it happens. But it will be happening before the end of the year.
Can't wait. Thank you so much for coming on, Renza, and thank you for all of the incredible work that you do to ending this stigma.
Take care. Thanks.
Now it is time for our final guest of the evening. At least it's my evening. We've heard from so many fantastic people with diabetes about the highs and the lows, and we thought, who better to finish off this evening than somebody who's been living with diabetes for almost 50 years. One of our beloved dedoc voices. Welcome to the stage, Rick. Rick, we can't hear you just yet. Yeah.
So sorry.
That's
That'd
it.
Be better.
Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I've really enjoyed the day. It's been so much fun to listen to everybody, and it's great to be here this afternoon.
Well, we're so happy to have you. Your story with diabetes is incredible. I've heard it all before, and I can't wait for everyone else to hear it. So tell us a little bit about yourself. 49 years of diabetes. How did it all start?
Well, for me, it started at Disney World, which is where I was diagnosed, which proves it's not always happiest place on earth. But for my family, it really started back in the 1940s. My aunt was diagnosed in 1947 at age 7. Unfortunately, she passed with DKA and organ failure in 1950 at 10 years old. My mom was diagnosed at about 1962, and she died in 1986. And I was diagnosed in 1974, and here it is 2013, 49 years later, and I'm still going. It's been a remarkable journey, and I like to say that I'm living proof of the fact that our technology, our advancements are working, and I'm also living proof of what it means to be in community.
So can you, I think we have some photos to share as well of your aunt and your mother there. Beautiful photos. Can you share a little bit about what it felt like to get that diagnosis yourself, having known about these family members?
It was devastating. I was so angry. You have no idea how angry I was. Angry internally, and that anger lasted a long time. It sabotaged me as a person with diabetes. It sabotaged how I reacted to the disease, how I treated myself, and it was I was terribly angry. And it wasn't really until the early 90s that it was when I received my diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis that I said to myself, what a gift. My mom fought for life for years, and she would have given anything for one more day on this earth. And if somebody would have traded her one more day for 10 years of rheumatoid arthritis, she would have taken it. And I thought, I have been given a gift. I really have. The second disease is...
It's opened your eyes to that.
Yeah, it was just a true wake-up call.
Mm.
And I began treating myself in a far more kind way. And I'm happy to report that when I went for 5 years without seeing a doctor, any doctor, which one could do in that time. But my first A1C was right around 15. Today, my A1C's average around 5.5. And I always say it's because of the person I married, who decided she would stick with me, science, and good luck.
So let's talk about that person you married then. She had a huge impact on you.
Yeah, she sure did. We were married.
You see her here.
I met Cheryl in 1974, just 2 months after my diagnosis. And I met her in United States government class, our senior year. I like to mention that I asked her out 3 times and she said no 3 times. In fact, the 3rd time she said, hell no, quit asking me out. And we parted, went on our separate ways, and I was at college. And in 1976, she called me for a date. And I want to tell you, that is something that females did not do in 1976.
So what role does diabetes play in your life, in your marriage?
It's everything. I mean, not a day goes by that we don't treat this together. She is as much, sometimes more invested in diabetes than I am. And I always say that, the people we love are really our type 3s. They are the people who don't have diabetes, but they live diabetes. And Cheryl is one hell of a type 3.
We also often talk about type F for friends and family, and I can relate to that a lot. I've been with my type F for 14 years, just as long as I've had diabetes as well. And just last night, I had one of those really horrible hypos, went into raccoon mode, ate everything. And of course, I woke up feeling horrible. And it's just fantastic having somebody who maybe doesn't get exactly what it feels like, but just does their best to empathize and be there for you, make you that cup of tea. So how do you deal with these things, and what is it that Cheryl can provide for you? Shout out to Timo, by the way.
One thing that Cheryl really provides to me is this sense that we have to keep going, because there have been so many times in my life when I've thought, I'm just going to give up. I just can't do it anymore. And she says, we have 3 grandchildren. This is the best time of our life, or this is the middle part of our life, or it's the beginning part of our life. And Rick, we just have to keep going. And there is nothing like that. There is nothing like having that cheerleader, that person who complains, because she certainly does sometimes at my decisions. There's nothing like the person who says, Rick, I think you need to get some mental health therapy. There's nothing like that persistent voice of, I need to do this one more time, if only to not let her down.
So we've already seen that question pop up for the audience, but I'm also going to ask the same question to you. Do you have tips for anyone watching for a long and happy marriage or relationship with diabetes alongside of it?
So I don't think there's any magic. I think that realizing that I think we have to be honest. I think we have to, I asked Cheryl to marry me, and I got right afterward, I had to confess to her that I did not think it was a good idea. And
because of your diabetes.
Yeah. I said, I just don't think that you understand what a life living with a person with chronic disease. I don't think you understand what that is. And she said, no, I don't understand at all. I'll learn, but I want to be in it with you. And I vacillated for almost a month. And I finally said yes. By the way, I was married when I was 19.
Wow, that's incredible. And we saw your marriage, your wedding photo just now. It's beautiful to see. It's such a heartening example of love and companionship, because it doesn't have to be a relationship. It doesn't have to be your partner. It can be a friend or anyone else who gives you that feeling of being supported with diabetes and with all the other ups and downs, right?
That's 100% correct. In my life, I saw my mom and dad, who were so committed to each other, and I saw the trials and tribulations of my mom's journey. And that's what I thought we would have. That's not what we've had. We've had it much better. Science is so much improved. And no, you do not have to have a life partner to have somebody to share that with. Kind of a funny story. I was not using a pump, and my doctor was after me to use a pump, and Cheryl wanted me to use a pump. Everybody was talking about pumps. And I was a school administrator. I went to speak with a group of kids in high school who had diabetes. There were 7 kids there with pumps, and I was the only person in the room who wasn't using a pump. And I left that discussion. I got in the car and I called my endocrinologist. I said, get me a pump, and because there's no way I can be this far out of style. And 2 weeks later, I had a pump. And so, we have to look for what moves us in the time that we get moved.
Yeah. Wise words. Thank you so much, Rick, for sharing your life story. It's incredible. I'm so happy that you got to share this with the whole community out there. And I'm so happy that you were our very final speaker of the night. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I want to say a huge thank you to every one of these fantastic speakers we've heard today. The stories that you shared resonated with me, but from what I see in the comments, they really resonated with the community out there as well. So thank you. For those of you who are watching live, don't log off. Remember, Doc Night is about to start and we want to see you there. We meet you at kumospace.com/docnight. Don't worry, we'll share the link later on as well. But it's so fun to get to talk to each other, have virtual drinks and dance parties. Please, please join us. If you're watching the recording, please make sure to share it. If you like this event, have a look at our website for previous events, and please get out your notepads because there's lots more to come. Of course, there are symposia, dedoc symposia at the upcoming conferences, EASD and ISPAD. And of course, join us for the live stream on World Diabetes Day, the 14th of November. And please follow the dedoc voices on their adventures at EASD and ISPAD this year. You've heard from some of them tonight. There are so many more than 200, and we're so proud. And of course, we're so thankful to our industry and conference partners for making this possible. If you're curious, the next application opportunity will be in November. Now, before we move on to Doc Night, I want to thank a few very special people. Team dedoc. It's just me in front of the camera, but behind the scenes, there are so many more people working tirelessly to make this event a reality. So a huge thank you to Morgan, Tebe, Natalie, Katharina, Laura, Renza, and most of all, Bastian, who founded dedoc more than 10 years ago. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who joined us live or watching the recording. We see your comments. Please keep them coming. It's so lovely to see what you think about this event, how it makes you feel. Please continue. Thank you so much for your support. This was Doc Day. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope to see you again very soon.